Vamos a tener a la doctora Federica Raspa, ¿sí?, que nos va a hablar de una dieta basada en fibra comparado con cereales, cuál es la mejor para el bienestar del caballo y los efectos sobre la permeabilidad intestinal, las características musculares y el estado oxidativo de los caballos. La doctora Federica Raspa es del Departamento de Ciencias Veterinarias de la Universidad de Turín en Italia. Tiene el grado de médico veterinario, doctorado en ciencias veterinarias obtenido con honores, ambos por la Universidad de Turín, Italia, y investigador en el campo de bienestar y nutrición animal, así como una práctica veterinaria privada. Nutrición equina es su foco de investigación y ha publicado 12 artículos en revistas indizadas en los últimos 5 años. Ha sido acreedora de becas otorgadas por asociaciones profesionales de ciencia animal. Tengo el gusto de presentar a la doctora Federica Raspa, que tiene una temática muy especial para nosotros el día de hoy. Adelante.
So, good evening, I'm Federica Raspa and I'm going to present my contribution on the effect of a fiber versus a cereal grain-based diet on the welfare of the horse, with a focus on the effect on metabolism and gut health. I came from the northwest of Italy, from a region that name Piedmont. This name is related to the fact that Piedmont is on the bottom of the Alps, and as you can see in the picture, Turin is the main city of Piedmont, with this beautiful landscape. Beside the main city, there is my institution that is the Department of Veterinary Sciences of the University of Turin. The blue building present the offices of the Department of Animal Nutrition and Feeding, and beside the blue building there is the stable in which several animal species are housed, and among these species there are also horses. My activities here is related not only to research activity, but I collaborate with the nutrition consultancy service of the veterinary hospital. In particular, I collaborate with Professor Emanuela Valle, that is a diplomate of the European Society for Veterinary and Comparative Nutrition, with a subspecialty in equine nutrition. During my career, I passionate in animal welfare and nutrition. I started to work on donkey welfare with particular attention to the assessment of the milk for the nutrition of infants affected by cow milk protein allergy. During my PhD course, I work a lot on the equine farm by applying integrated approach to evaluate and to safeguard horse welfare at farming level, focusing my studies on their feeding management. When we talk about welfare, we talk about a complex task, because the welfare is a multidimensional concept that encompasses the physiological and ethological needs of horses. And to understand the physiological and ethological needs of these animal species, it is needed to answer the question, who is the horse? Horse is a grazing herbivorous. It is a monogastric species, a ingot fermenter, and a social animal. When we stable horses, we limit its natural free movement, its sociability, and the foraging opportunity. So modify its physiological and ethological needs. And accordingly, we have to understand how to safeguard their welfare, as well as to safeguard the natural behaviors of animals. In fact, if we compare the time budget of horses in nature with the time budget of horses in stable condition, we can see that in a natural living condition, horses spend most of their daytime in foraging behavior while free moving. In stable condition, the feeding behavior is shorter compared to a natural living condition. Instead, the standing behavior increase. But what we have to keep in mind is that we have to safeguard this foraging opportunity that is a natural behavior that we need to preserve. The foraging behavior is something needed for a physiological and ethological point of view for all the horse categories. So sporting horses, leisure horses, or working horses need this foraging opportunity. In fact, we have to take into account the food pyramid of the horse, in which the foundation is the forage, is a forage-based diet. It is needed to underline this concept because feeding horses a balanced diet in which most of the energy is supplied by cereal grains concentrate still represent a common mistake, above all in sporting horses. But the energy is fundamental when we talk about sporting horses, because we have to supply the adequate energy requirement to maintain the horse body condition, but also to guarantee the storage and the availability of substrates needed to fuel muscular work. The energy sources are represented first of all by the fiber on the basis of the food pyramid of the horse. The fiber is able to supply the 70% of the energy requirement of the horse. And this energy is related to the fermentation processes of the fiber that is related also to the fermentation process in the ingut. So in the cecum and in the colon of the horses, the microorganism ferment the fiber, and the end products of these fermentation activities are represented by the volatile fatty acids, so the acetate, the propionate, the butyrate, that are so important to satisfy the energy requirements of the horse. But what forage we have to supply in stable condition? The main recommendation is to supply first cut long stem meadow hay of good hygienic and nutritional quality. So take attention to the quality of the fiber of the forage in terms, for example, of mold and dust. But how much hay should be fed? It is recommended that horse at a healthy weight, so not overweight, should ideally be fed ad libitum hay. But when ad libitum hay it is not possible, we have to expect a minimum daily hay intake that is represented for at least the 1.5% of the horse body weight on dry matter basis. This means that a 500 kilogram horse should be fed 7.5 kilogram of hay as a dry matter basis. If we consider a hay with a dry matter content of 90%, we have to perform a simple proportion, and so a 500 kilogram horses should be fed not less than 8.5 kilogram of hay. But what we have to remember is that it is really difficult to check the real amounts of hay that is supplied by the owner in stable condition. So if you are not sure about the quantity of hay that is fed to your horses, consider that you should integrate the fiber by use some commercial feedstuff that are fibrous concentrate feed characterized by more than 18% of crude fiber in their label, that are represented, for example, by chaff, pellet, buffer, and cubes. We have the opportunity also to add other energy sources to our diet to satisfy the energy requirements of our sporting horses. These supplemental energy sources are represented by the non-structural carbohydrates, represented by starch and simple sugar. The cereal grains are the main source of starch in the diet of the horse, and the cereal grains most used are represented by corn, barley, and oat. These cereals are different pre-sickle digestibility, and in particular the oat is characterized by a higher pre-sickle digestibility in the horses. But it is really important to underline that the horse is characterized by a limited digestive capacity of the starch that is related to its anatomical and physiological feature. In fact, the horse is characterized by a low production of the pancreatic amylase that is responsible for the starch digestion within the small intestine. So, how much starch should be fed? The recommendation is not to feed horse with more than 1 gram of starch per kilogram body weight meal, or not more than 2 grams of starch per kilogram body weight per day. If we consider the meal, we can understand that a 500 kilogram horse can digest not more than 500 grams of starch per meal. Thus means 1 kilogram of a cereal-based concentrate feed. We have also the possibility to add other energy sources to our diet that are high digestible fiber sources, the so-called super fibers, that are represented, for example, by sugar beet pulp and soybean fuels. These compounds are characterized by lower undigestible materials such as lignin, and generally they are pellet feed labeled to contain more than the 16% of crude fiber, and generally they are fatted concentrate with more than the 5% of fat, crude fat in the label. We can increase the energy content of our diet by increasing the fat content on the diet. The fat can be included in our diet by supplying the fatted concentrates that are labeled to contain more than the 5% of good fat, or we can add some vegetable oil that should be integrated in the diet with a limit of 100 gram of vegetable oil per 100 kilogram body weight. It is really important to introduce slowly the vegetable oil at least in 14-21 days in order to avoid intestinal disturbances. Remember that increase the fat supplementation, increase the production of free radicals, so it is really important to balance adequately the antioxidants vitamin, for example, vitamin E. So, according to our food pyramid diet of the horse, it is really important to remember the balancer, because the sporting horse and the work are related to the increase of minerals and vitamins, above all vitamins of the group B, but also the vitamin C. The horse is able to synthesize vitamin C in the liver, but this synthesis decreases when horse is highly stressed and when horse works. So it is important to balance this vitamin that is really involved in the stabilization of cell membranes, promoting the integrity of the endothelia and promoting the immunomodulation. Other antioxidant vitamin and mineral that we have to balance are the vitamin E and selenium. For a practical point of view, you have always to check the label of your feedstuff, because the vitamin E it is present in different isoforms, and the RAC alpha tocopherol it is the biologically active form, so pay attention to the label. So, nutrition is have a key role in the equine welfare, because it have a strong effect on metabolism and gut health of the horse. Considering metabolism, you have to remember that the energy that horse use to perform its activity is related to the direct use of the energy supplied during the meal, but most important is the storage energy, represented by the glycogen at muscular and liver level, that derive from the digestion of the fiber and the concentrate, so the non-structural carbohydrates, and the storage energy represented by the triglycerides at intramuscular and adipose tissue level, that derive by the fat digestion. This storage energy is mobilized when the horse performs its activity, and it is transformed in ATP, that is so important for muscle contraction. So the diet influences the storage energy and the mobilization of the storage energy. It is important that you remember that the inclusion of superfiber in the diet does not appear to adversely affect the glycogen utilization or muscle lactate clearance during the exercise. So, a fiber-based diet may offset the acidosis induced by the exercise. So, Also, a fiber-based diet can provide proteins of high biological values. In particular, you should remember that it is really important to balance the lysine, that is the main limiting amino acid in the horse diet, especially if diets are cereal-based, concentrate based. In fact, lysine supports the muscle development, and also the diet influences the muscle characteristic, because a starch diet and a fat and a diet characterized by high fat content is related to an increase of the intramuscular fat concentration compared by a forage-based diet characterized by high protein value, in which we have an increase of the protein concentration within the muscular composition. The nutrition interfere also with the gut health, because it is one of the main factors that influence the gut health of the horse. When we talk about gut health, we talk about a concept still difficult to define in veterinary medicine, because in human medicine it is defined as absence of clinical disease. But in veterinary medicine, it is defined as a multidimensional concept that depends on the maintenance of a delicate balance between the host, the gut microbiota, the structure and the function of the gastrointestinal barrier and the dietary compounds. So, for a gut health point of view, the nutrition has a key role to safeguard equine welfare. So if we remember who is the horse in a natural living condition, the horse spends most of their time in foraging behavior by a trickle feeding behavior, and this is responsible for the presence of a protective fiber mat within the stomach. When we talk about horses kept in a human-managed environment, so in stable condition, the foraging activities reduce and the fasting period increase. So the protective fiber mat is not so present within the stomach, and this can be a risk factor for the onset of gastric ulceration. In fact, we have to remember the anatomical feature of the stomach. The stomach of the horse is particular because it is characterized by two regions. So the squamous or non-glandular region that is not protected by the mucus and by the bicarbonate, and the glandular region that instead is protected by the mucus and by the bicarbonate. We have to remember that the horse is a particular species because the chlorhydric acid is continuously secreted, also when the stomach is empty. This is the reason why we have to increase in stable condition the opportunity for foraging behavior. When the foraging opportunity increase, the intake of hay is guaranteed the presence of this protective fiber mat. So the squamous region, so the non-protected region by the mucus, is protected by the effect of the acids. But when a diet is a cereal-based pellet feed diet, what happens? That the pellet feed, the cereal-based concentrate remain on the bottom of the stomach, and the acids flow on the top. So it affects the squamous mucosa non-protect, and this lead to an increased risk of the onset of gastric ulceration. Not only the amounts of starch in the diet, but also the horse management, for example, stressful condition as a training transports of drug treatment are responsible for the presence, for the onset of inflammation and ulceration to the gastric mucosa. So we have to pay attention on how we manage the horse. So what we have to remember on the basis of the anatomical and physiological feature of the stomach, that first we should supply the forage in order that the protective fiber mat develop its role of protection on the squamous mucosa region, and then we can supply the concentrate feed. Moreover, we have to increase the foraging opportunity by reducing the fasting time in order to safeguard the ethological need of the horse, as well as to accomplish its physiological need. So when we feed unbalanced diet to the horse, so a concentrate-based diet, the risk of colic increase proportionally to the amounts of concentrate that we feed. There is a reason for this that is related to the microbial composition. A cereal-based concentrate diet is responsible for a condition of acidosis within the ingut of the horse. And microorganisms that are responsible for the fermentation of substrates suffer. So we have a shift to lacting from short chain fatty acids producing bacteria to lactating acid bacteria, and we have also, as you can see here, a loss in diversity of microorganisms. In this study, the authors describe really well what happened. The authors perform a trial in which they compare how a fiber versus a cereal-based concentrate diet influence the core microbiome of the horse. As you can see, we have a strong reduction of the core microbiome in terms of number of operational taxonomic units, as well as microbial diversity in the horses that were fed a cereal-based concentrate diet. Also, in one of our study, these are not published data, we have compared what happened when we fed a starch-based diet compared to a forage-based diet. And we have found that within the digestive tract of the horse, we have a strong differences in the microbial composition. This difference is related also to the different composition of the volatile fatty acids production. Within the starch group, we found that the total volatile fatty acids production increased, but as you can see in the table, this increase in total VFAs was related to the fact that the 50% of the volatile fatty acids was related to the increase of the valeric acids, whereas the valeric acids was not produced in the forage-based diet group. This is important to remember because the valeric acid is involved in the pathogenesis of gastric ulcers, and also probably the valeric acids influence and is responsible for inflammation condition within the digestive tract of the horse. Here you can see a section of the unum of one horse from fed a starch-based diet compared to a horse fed a forage-based diet. This inflammatory condition was responsible also in our study to the increase of the total mesophilic aerobic bacteria counts in mesenteric lymph nodes and liver in the horses fed high starch diet compared to the forage-based diet. Probably the high starch diet influencing the microbiota composition and altering the volatile fatty acids production led to damage of the gastrointestinal epithelium, so was responsible for a condition of hyperpermeability, so of leaky gut, and so to the passage of bacteria from the gut lumen to the lymph node and the liver, so the bacterial and the toxins that flows into the portal circulation and the lymphatic system. This is important because this situation can be responsible of severe systemic condition, for example for laminitis, but also for reduction of the performance of the animals and to the not possibility to maintain the adequate body condition. Here I have attached some of our works in which these concepts are deeply described if you want to study what happened more in depth. So if we talk about a practical point of view, what we have to do on the basis of our discussion is that we have to avoid abrupt change. This because we have to let the microorganism in the ingot to accustom to the changes. So you have to avoid the abrupt change for a nutritional point of view, but also you have to avoid the bedding changes and also the time in which the meals are supplied. This because it is well known that the risk of colic increase when the changes of feed are not gradually, as you can see in this graph. And when you transport horses, for example, for a competition, remember to not change the hay. At least the 30% of the ration of the horse should be the usual hay. So remember also that haylage is not hay. Haylage is characterized by a dry matter content of around the 50%, whereas the hay is characterized by a dry matter content of around 85% or more. So pay attention to the quantities. The abrupt change is related to the abrupt changes of the hay significantly increase the risk of colic. So pay attention when you change the hay in a competing situation. So the hay should be the same, or at least for the 30% of the meal. During competition, don't not change the feed stuff and not increase their quantity. And remember to not overwhelm the 2 grams of starch per kilogram body weight of meal. The concentrate meal should be fed 3-4 hours before the competitions to avoid the insulin peak that interfere negatively to the glycogen utilization and storages. When you go in a competition situation, try to use the same buckets and feeder. And if the horse is accustomed, use the small wool hay net. It is useful when you go in a competition situation to let hay to nibble for the horses, not more for an energy point of view, but this is useful for ethological point of view. You remember, horses is in nature eat most of the time, and this kind of behavior help him to fight a stressful situation and to and help him also during the competition itself, because a little of forage within the stomach help to have the protective fiber mat that preserve the horse for the onset of gastric ulcer. So what you have to take always in mind is that nutrition has a key role to safeguard horse welfare, because the need of the horse today is the same of its ancestors. You have to respect the food pyramid of the horse, in which the forage is the foundation. You have to choose a first cut hay of good nutritional and hygienic quality, and the quantity of hay that you should be fed is at least the 1.52% of horse body weight that should be supplied in at least 3 meals a day. Prefer fibrous feed to increase the energy content of the ration, so you have cubes, chaff, buffer, so you have some choice that can help you to increase the energy content without increase the starch content of your diet. Remember about the starch that you have to not overwhelm the starch digestion capacity of the horse, so not more than 1 gram of starch kilogram body weight meal, and not more than 2 grams of starch kilogram body weight per day. Remember the point of the food pyramid of the horse, so remember the balancer, and avoid abrupt changes in the diet or in the feeding management and in the management of the horse. So the microorganism will be happy about the gradually changes, and your gut health is safeguarded. Thank you for your attention.